What's going on, Packers fans? Welcome into Pack-A-Day Happy Hour presented by Luigi's Pizza. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Huge thank you to Luigi's for sponsoring us today. Make sure to find them over at LuigesPizza.com. I am debating between, per usual, the ultra thin crust and the fresh dough. Almost positive that I'm going to do the fresh dough breakfast pizza for dinner tonight because it sounds freaking amazing and that's what I want. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Find it over at LuigesPizza.com. Usually Festival Foods has them if it's in your area. I know it's not everywhere, but if you're in the area and you can get it, do yourself a favor. Go get yourself a Luigi's frozen pizza. I should be here for about 55 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. I have probably a hard out at the hour mark, but we'll try to get to as many questions as I can over the course of the next hour or so. It's been an interesting, week or so. Disappointing preseason game with some actual good performances mixed in, which was kind of weird where some of the players that you actually really wanted to performed well, but it was an abysmal game to watch. So do with that what you will. And then you have Jordan Love get hurt. The entire wide receiver core is, incapacitated basically at the moment, save for Matthew Golden. Sounds like a couple of those are pretty minor, but just an interesting week overall. Today, the team is traveling to Indianapolis. Tomorrow, they will do the joint practices. And we should get some fun updates out of that, I would think. But overall, just an interesting, week and a half. Kind of a little bit of like a meh feeling right now. But hopefully I should say, we got to get past that, have a good joint practice, good preseason game, get those vibes flowing in a positive direction. And sooner or later, before you know it, this team will hopefully be clicking on all cylinders as we get ready for week 1 to take on Detroit. And then right thereafter, Washington in week 2 on Thursday Night Football. All right, with that being said, let's get to all of your incredible questions. Excited to get to these today, so make sure to get all of them in. I'm really curious, which wide receivers make the practice squad? Can you handicap the non-top 5 wide receivers' chances? Well, first of all, some wide receivers need to get healthy in order to sort of see this all play out. But what my expectation is right now, I think Reed, Golden, Dobbs, Savion, and Dontavian Wicks, those 5 are going to make the roster. Christian Watson will be on the PUP list. That leaves you with 7 remaining wide receivers. There's a potential 6th spot for either Malik Heath or McCole Hardman. As of right now, I do not think McCole Hardman's going to make it. I also kind of don't think he signs back on the practice squad. So we could see McCole leave. That would be kind of my guess at the moment. There is a possibility he makes the team. There is a possibility that he stays on the practice squad. There's also a possibility that they release him. The first week goes by, and then as you get set into week 2, you pick him back up so he's no longer a vested veteran, and then you can release him at any point, and he doesn't count fully towards the cap. His salary doesn't guarantee at that point. So there's a couple things that you could play with there too. But my assumption today would be McCole does not make it, probably also not a practice squad guy. Heath is the interesting one and probably the true decision at wide receiver 6 on if you want to keep him or not. And then if not, you would really try to do everything in your power to get him back in the practice squad. I do not think he would get claimed. It's possible that he could. I would put it at like 80-20 that he doesn't. If he does, he's gone. If not, then it's up to Malik. Do you want to stay in Green Bay, be on the practice squad here? He would certainly have other opportunities on other teams' practice squads at minimum. So he could go elsewhere, but that would be an interesting one. I think after that, if I had to say at the moment, Isaiah Nayer's interesting. I need to see a little bit more. Kwan Baker, they just picked up, so that's a tough one. I would say, between Shepard, Hicks, and Cornelius Johnson, they probably just keep 2 of those unless Malik Heath is on the team on the practice squad, in which case Heath is probably 1, and then you have 1, maybe 2 spots elsewhere. I would probably say Shepard at the moment, and then I think it's just a battle between the other ones, and even Shepard still has to fight for everything. So I don't know that I have a great feel between Cornelius Johnson, Will Shepard, Julian Hicks, and Isaiah Nayer, and Kwan Baker at the moment. I would probably put Shepard ahead right now, but those spots on the practice squad at wide receiver are certainly very much up for grabs and should be kind of fun to keep track of the remainder of preseason. All right, John, on the same page here. Could Goody cut Hardman? Yes. Resign him to the practice squad? Possibly. Elevate him for week 1? Possibly. And then sign him without guaranteeing his contract, or does that guarantee his contract too? Think he'd be claimed? I do not think he would be claimed. It is a possibility that they could do exactly what you're saying. Also, it may not, need to be on the practice squad for that week. They could just let him sit as a free agent for a week, and then as soon as Monday rolls around after the Lions game, they could add him to the active roster, and then his contract would not guarantee at that point in time. So there's a couple different directions that they could go with. I still think the most surprising right now would be just keeping him on the 53 and guaranteeing his contract for the year, especially with Christian coming back at some point. That seems like something they probably wouldn't want to do, but we'll have to kind of get through some of those roster gymnastics to see just what kind of spots are available, who's healthy. And if all of a sudden, like Wicks and Reed, Watson, and we basically know Watson, right? But if Wicks and Reed can't go, well, then you're down to what? Dobbs, Golden, Savion Williams, Malik Heath. Like McCole Hardman might make it by default as your number 5. Now, maybe if you still feel you can release him, put him on the practice squad and call him up that week, that would be a way to sort of circumvent that. But that gets a little bit more dicey where if he does sign with another team or get claimed somewhere else, then it becomes a bit more of an issue. But that all is going to be very interesting as we get closer and closer to cut down day. Yash, there's just a feeling in the air in historical context of a slow start week 1, given it's the Lions and they can't do that. What do you think this team needs to do to start fast week 1 and at home? I just think that they need to, up the intensity a little bit, which I have zero doubt on that they will. They'll get that intensity going over the course of the next couple of weeks. I should add the practice the other day where we did see some of those injuries was an incredibly intense practice. They are fired up going into Indianapolis, going into that joint practice. This is a team that is very, very focused even in that practice. And I have a hope that will kind of continue moving forward. But this comes down to execution in game and not making your own mistakes. Listen, I know that this is Pack a Day and not Brewers a Day, but the Brewers right now are such an amazing example of attention to detail and doing the little things. I mean, they're just on an unbelievable tear right now because they don't beat themselves and they do all the little things right. And there's more that goes into it than just that, but those two are at the forefront of very obvious reasons as to why they're winning at an unbelievable rate right now. And for Green Bay to beat the best teams, to become one of those elite type of teams, they can't beat themselves, and it's going to come down to attention to detail. We saw in the preseason game, even though it means nothing whatsoever, they had poor attention to detail, and they did not have the requisite intensity and focus and urgency in that game. So those are and they did beat themselves. So that to me is what they just have to kind of get cleaned up. They will be very fired up for that game. That's going to have a big fight feel to it. Packers, Lions, 3:30 p.m. game. It's going to be Nance and Romo as your announcers on that one. And it's a big game. It's a huge game. That game last year in Detroit, where Detroit just went for it on every 4th down, that was a massively fun game. I think it's going to be a heavyweight fight. I think they're going to go back and forth. I think they're both going to punch each other in the mouth on numerous occasions. And we're going to find out very quickly if Green Bay has the jaw to withstand a few of those punches and the ability to throw some haymakers back. Really, really looking forward to the game. The vibe now means nothing. I want to see what that vibe is going into week 1. And hopefully we see that vibe kind of change over the course of the next couple of weeks. Also interesting, last few live chats, the YouTube handles are instead of the channel names now. Yeah, I don't know why it's done that, but apparently it's done that. Dennis says it would be silly to miss happy hour. Dennis, I totally agree and could not say it better myself. Thanks so much for being here, my friend. I like that Luigi says the small size pizzas too. I totally agree. Perfect for baking in the toaster. Oh, I have not done it toaster oven style in the summer when I don't want the full size one. The little mini ones, the self, ones, or I don't know what you call them, whatever. All of them to me, like the big ones are also just for me, but the tinier ones, they're not tiny though. They're like a good size, but those individual pizzas are fantastic. They're perfect size and fill you up. Those are must gets if you have the opportunity to get them. I have no idea what our 53-man corner situation is going to be. If you had your say, who would you keep? This is another interesting one to me. The first thing is Hobbs, or like, what's the situation with Hobbs? Is he ready to go? Are they going to have to IR him and bring him back after 4 weeks? I don't think it's going to get to that point, but that is definitely one that I really want to keep an eye on with Nate Hobbs. But let's just say Hobbs is healthy. Hobbs, Nixon, Valentine are your top 3. We know Ballantyne's going to play some in the slot as well. I think Melton's making it. I really believe Kamal Haddon's making it. So I think those are, 4 and 5. And then I think you have multiple options. The first option would be, that's it. Those are your 5 plus, Javon Bullard, and that's your kind of corner group. Then the next would be you keep 6. And if you keep 6, it's a battle between Kalen King, Corey Ballentine, and and Micah Robinson. And usually what a lot of times it comes down to in that situation is which one do you think is most likely to get claimed? If you cut the other, if you cut two of them, you want to cut the two that you think are least likely to be claimed more than anything else. I could see it going in any direction. Ballantyne's a really good special teamer. You kind of know what you have. There's no upside. Micah Robinson, 7th round pick, but he didn't really give up anything. I thought he looked the part for the most part in this first preseason game. He's, again, 7th round pick, actual draft choice this year. And there seems to be legitimate upside there. I think Kalen King gives you a little bit more of that slot mentality. I think Ballantyne and probably even Micah Robinson give you a little bit more on teams. I thought Kalen King had a really nice game this past week. So that to me is where, do they keep 6? And if they do keep 6, which one of Ballantyne, Kalen King, and Micah Robinson do they want to keep? And very, very, very clearly, Kamal Hadden is not a lock. I just think he's the best of that group. And even if you look at, don't make anything usually of like the unofficial depth chart. Let's be very clear on that. But if you do look at the unofficial depth chart, there is, Kamal Hadden ahead of some of those other ones. I don't actually think that kind of is by mistake. I'm going to see if I can pull this up. And I don't know if they changed it for this week or not. All right. So at corner, you have Nixon, Hobbs on the first line, and then Ballantyne and Hadden on the second line, and then Melton and King after that, then Ballantyne and Micah Robinson, and then Tyron Herring. Why you should not trust this at all is that Jonathan Baldwin is still listed at corner, and that dude's been at safety through the entire offseason. So this is why you don't trust it. But I kind of believe that, and just based on what I've seen in camp too, I think Kamal Hadden is the 4th best true corner on this team. So that's why I put him in that spot. And then I think Bo is just making it based on special teams ability, potential upside, and the versatility to play wide receiver as well. And then it just gets interesting between Ballantyne, King, and Robinson. I kind of put Micah maybe as the leader of the 6 right now because I think he has the best upside, but that one could go in any different direction with those 3. The one thing I will say is I'd be the most surprised if Kalen King and Corey Ballantyne were the 2 choices. Both of them have been more primarily slot players, not outside corners. I don't think they'd keep both of those guys in the slot when you already have Hobbs in the slot, Bullard in the slot, Nixon can play the slot. I think it's just overkill at that point. But yeah, I do think Kamal Hadden is probably the leader of that 4, 5, 6 group right now. Cheesehead TV went live too. This is where Aaron and I need to just communicate better, because if we're both smart, both of us would just go live at the same time, put it together in the same channel, put it on both channels on Cheesehead TV and Pack a Day, and then wouldn't be stealing each other. Technically, I think I'm stealing his thunder today because I think he goes live at 4 Central, Monday through Friday, pretty much. Usually my normal routine is to go 4 p.m. on Fridays, but I haven't been able to as of late. So lately I've been going more 3 p.m. So I actually think I'm stomping on his grounds more than he's stomping on mine. So Aaron and Cheesehead TV, my apologies for that. All right, we're going to get back to this in just a moment. Going to get to these super chats. Mike McGee, thank you for being a member for 16 freaking months. Andy, going to Cleveland week 3. If we lose to them, I'll be 100% on the fire Matt LaFleur train. Seeing us lose to Zach Wilson, Daniel Jones, DeVito, Carr in Jacksonville, Ritter in Atlanta. Mike, I hate to tell you, my guy, this is not a fire LaFleur tweet. This is a fire Mike McGee tweet. Like we need to have a conversation, my friend. If this is not on Matt at all, this is on you. If they lose this game and you go to this one after you've been at games where they've lost to Zach Wilson, Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Derek Carr, and Desmond Ritter, man, I hate to say it, and especially as you're a member for 16 months, you got to look in that mirror, my friend. You're the bad luck charm. So yes, Mike, we are going to be keeping track. And if there is a Packers loss to Cleveland in week 3, nobody, and I mean nobody, should be calling for Matt LaFleur. We're coming to you, Mike, and we're going to be having a conversation because your ticket privileges for games are revoked at that point in time. This is it. This is your last chance. You've got to come up with the win. If you need to get in the locker room and give him a pep talk, I don't care what you need to do, Mike. Figure this out. This is on you. You got to come up with a win. And I think most people would agree with me at this point. So damn it, Mike, get us a win. It's your turn. All right, Nathaniel, thank you for the super chat. Hypothetically speaking, if LVN has a 15 sack season, do you think Good is forgiven by the fans for the 12th pick? Probably not. But yes, I think he would be vindicated in a pretty significant way if LVN went out and had a 15 sack season. Now, If he had 15 pressures and they all turned into 15 sacks and they were all pretty fluky, we can have a conversation, but I don't think that's ever happened in the history of football. So barring something insane, I will say yes, that Goody will be very vindicated for that pick. And there will still be, by the way, if he goes on and has a Pro Bowl year this year, there will still be those who will be like, yeah, he could have still had Christian Gonzalez, though, which, by the way, Christian Gonzalez was the guy I wanted at the time. But still, hopefully LVN just goes out and crushes it this year. Everybody is worried about week 1 with the injuries. I'm worried about the whole season. Let these injured players take their time. Ralph, I think that's well said. I would be willing to bet you that there is a chunk of these players, Jordan included, that if there was a real game against Indianapolis this week, we would see a very different injury report. This is playing the long game with these players. You don't push it back. I saw a couple of tweets, and it's just, very classic, but you get to the point where, you see Jordan go out with a thumb ligament issue, and immediately it's, well, Brett Favre played with a broken thumb on his throwing hand. Yeah, he did. And you know what? You know who else would have played this week with a torn ligament in his thumb if it were a regular season or postseason game? Jordan Love. It's not. It's a preseason game. There's a lot of time left. It's a pretty good week to take off and let that thing heal a little bit, get the surgery that you need. And hopefully, next week he's back and it's completely much ado about nothing. There's a lot of these guys that are taking it easier right now in camp because it's a long season. You don't need to overwork it, or you've got a calf injury that turns into an Achilles or a hamstring that turns into an ACL or whatever the case may be. Make sure you get the rest that you need. There's going to be plenty of times this year where you're going to have to push through injuries. Now is not that time. So I think that's what well said, Ralph. Dennis, thank you as well for the super chat. You guys are incredible. Have you seen any stats on injuries by position? Would think DBs with smaller guys hitting bigger guys at high speed would be up there. Dennis, I have not. I'd have to look into that further. It's not something that I, tend to spend a ton of time on thinking about, is like, what are the injury propensities based on weight, density, height, weights, all of that stuff. Like, not necessarily top of mind for me, but if I ever run across it, I'll certainly bring it in. And if anyone else has a view on that, let me know. But no, I have not seen anything like that. I would assume that, smaller corners and DBs that are throwing their body around recklessly have an opportunity to get, injured at a little bit of a greater pace. But I think there's 22 guys out there just having constant car crashes. Like, nobody's safe. Everyone can get hurt. Plus, these bodies are going a billion miles per hour, stopping on a dime, putting unknown pressure on their Achilles and hamstrings and ACLs and MCLs and everything else, abductors, biceps, torn pecs, like all of it. It's a brutal sport, guys. These are beyond gladiators that are fighting out there for the right to stay in the NFL, be impact players, and get a big paycheck while they're at it as well. No question about it. But they are fighting tooth and nail to stay out there. It is a very violent and tough sport that definitely takes its toll over time. All right. Thank you again for those super chats. Really appreciate it. Hey, Andy, when watching game versus watching film, what position is your favorite for both, the same or different? That is a really fun question. I would say that it's not a position thing for me. Well, okay. Anything down the field on TV tape sucks, right? You can't see if the receivers are getting open. You can't see the safeties, the corners down the field. So trying to evaluate wide receivers, corners, or safeties in most game tapes is near impossible and mostly impossible. And so getting to watch those players on all, the all 22 and being able to see them from the wide angles is super helpful to actually be able to make evaluations on those players. Running back is probably one that I enjoy because you get that end zone view and you can actually see the holes as they see them. And you can kind of go through it in real time and be like, all right, what would I do in that situation? But I would argue here, Joe, is the where I get more joy when I put the film on is individual players. And I've talked about this in the past, but guys like David Bakhtiari, Devontae Adams, Jair in his prime, like just players like that are at a totally different level. Corey Linsley, Mercedes Lewis as a blocking tight end, guys that just do really unique things, usually from a technical standpoint and from a skill set standpoint, that just, you cannot get enough of it. For anyone that loves football, it's like a junkie needing their fix of what they're putting out on tape every single week. Getting to go out and watch Bakhtiari and Adams and some of those guys, Aaron Rodgers, of course, it was a real joy and a real pleasure just to see some of those guys and the attention to detail that they have. So that is probably a little bit more. It's not a specific position, but there are definitely positions that are much better to watch on film than they are in the game copy. I feel like it's rare as a Packers fan to be more confident in the defense going into a season. Do you share that feeling, even though I feel like our offense on paper is probably more talented? I don't have, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I would say my expectation for both of these is that it's a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. That's where I need both of these units to be based on what I think are fairly fair expectations. I don't think that's out of bounds for either unit. I don't know that I feel like exponentially better about the defense or anything like that. I am very intrigued by the defense. I am so excited to watch them play. I definitely don't have that feel where in most seasons you go into it being like, can the defense just get off the field? I don't want to watch them anymore. Just give up the touchdown so the offense can have the ball. Like, I don't have any feel like that. I think they're going to be good. I am interested to see because, as I've talked about, this is not me trying to be negative about the team. I'm very, very bullish on what this team can be. But they stacked some success against some pretty crappy opponents last year. When they played good teams, they struggled, and very much so on defense as well. In some of them, not all of them, but in some of those games against Philly, Detroit, Minnesota. So I want to see Detroit, Washington, first 2 weeks. Is this defense up to snuff? Can they stop two very, very, very potent offenses? And if so, I'm going to feel really good. And if not, I'm going to be like, ugh, can this defense be good enough when it actually needs to be in playoffs? And it's not the be all end all. You can't win the Super Bowl in early September, but you need to be able to show that you have the ability down the road to be able to shut down good teams. And I'm hopeful, but I'm very watchful as we open the season with two very tough opponents to see where the defense is at. But I'm excited to see where they're at in those two games. And those are a hell of a litmus test to start the season. What's the latest injury to Jordan? Does that make it more likely we retain Malik beyond the season? Yeah, Dylan, nothing to be too concerned about or anything regards to Malik's future, anything like that. Jordan should be back in about a week. He's going to be ready to go for week 1. I don't think it changes the calculus on Malik at all, other than he might get a few more opportunities this next week in this game coming up. But outside of that, no, I don't think it changes anything really. And hopefully Jordan's back next week, good to go. And this is all much ado about nothing other than a few missed practices, which are pretty minor in the scheme of things. All right, 404 is where I left off. I want to get to the super chat from Mike. My overall record is pretty good, including 13-1 versus the Bears, 2-0 when Malik is QB, was 0-9 at Herbert games until Monday Night Football against the Jets in 2023. All right, slight accident forgiveness, Mike. Slight accident forgiveness. Still need you to come up with that win against the Browns, and then we'll absolve everything as long as you beat the lowly Browns in week 3. So come up with that win, Mike. That should be an easy one. All right. Will the NFL get the Guardian app 2.0? It looks so much better. Guardian Cap 2.0? Guardian app? I don't know. I don't know what that means. Bambino, my apologies on that. I haven't seen anything about it, to be honest. If the Packers trade a conditional 7th rounder or acquire a player who got cut from another team, any players that come to mind that would help the team? I could probably think of a bunch potentially that you could go after, but like which ones are actually available and which ones you could get for a 7th round pick, that I don't, not off the top of my head. As we get to cut downs and we start seeing players be waived, there will be players that definitely, just pop out and be like, ooh, that could be somebody that they're potentially looking at to kind of at least still try to answer your question. I do think there's positions that they could be active towards. I wouldn't completely rule out, probably not as a waiver claim, but if like a quarterback that they liked became available, that maybe they try to change out Sean Clifford and bring in another developmental quarterback on the practice squad. I think that's possible. Don't think there's much opportunity at running back. Assuming everyone's healthy, there's no opportunity really at wide receiver. If they were to keep a number 4 tight end, because I think you're getting close to locking in John Fitzpatrick as the 3 and then Musgrave and Kraft. If you said they kept 4, I would be willing to bet you it was off of a waiver claim. I think offensive line, they could be very active, trying to maybe change over their 9th and 10th guys if they're not satisfied with those guys going into camp. Defensive tackle, I don't think there's really much opportunity. Same thing at defensive end, same thing at linebacker. Maybe corner. If they really liked a corner, it's possible that they could say, hey, we like our top 4, meaning the 3 starters in Haddon or something like that. Melton's going to make it, but we actually found somebody on waivers that was a little bit better than Kalen King or Micah Robinson or Corey Ballantyne? I don't think so, but not impossible. And then really no opportunity at safety or at kicker, punter, or long snapper. So a couple spots, maybe tight end, offensive line. Those would probably be the two that would make the most sense if they were to find somebody off of waivers, and then maybe a different quarterback on the practice squad. Andy, I'll be at the scrimmage tomorrow in Indy, Packer and enjoy the heck out of that. I've never been to one. What is interesting to keep an eye on? I think it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. They'll probably do some, kind of warm-ups, walkthroughs just with the Packers themselves and the Colts themselves to begin with. And then a lot of times you start off, they probably won't do one-on-ones because those end up doing like a lot of fights and things like that, or kind of getting people fired up. So I'm not sure you'll see one-on-ones, but you're just looking for team activities, and anything like that is really, really fun to kind of keep an eye on. And then what I would recommend too is, at times just kind of take your eye off the ball too. And if there's specific players that you want to see, like Matthew Golden, just watch Matthew Golden on particular plays and things like that. But kind of in the eye of the beholder, there's a lot going on. What you should probably try to do is period by period, think about what you want to focus on in that period, because if you try to focus on everything, you're going to get nothing out of it and your head's just going to be spinning. So they'll kind of be timed periods, and you'll usually hear like a big air horn between each period. And as you get into a new period and you see what they're doing, focus on what you want to focus on specifically in that period, and then you can change it for the next period. But otherwise, it can be a little bit overwhelming at times. Do you think contract bonuses give players incentive to play injured? I wonder if financial implications ever play into the motivation of a player to come back from injury a bit too early. Absolutely. I think all of these things are factors. I think pressure from teams. I think pressure from teammates at times. I think, monetary incentives, and just like the culture of football where you're expected to play hurt, not injured, but hurt. And there's a very gray area within those two things. I think all those things play a factor. And sometimes you think you might be able to come back from something and you try it, and then you end up injuring something else or injuring it worse. That can happen. And then like the other thing too is like there's that mentality of like, I've got to be a tough guy and I've got to get through this. And then you try to get through it and things just get worse and worse and worse. So you just have to be really smart about it. There's a lot of times no perfect answer or formula. Everybody's body is different. Their mindset's different, and their lifestyle factors are different. And but everything goes into that. And that's why it's up to the team to sometimes, hold a player back from themselves to make sure that they don't go out there when they want. I'm sure Christian Watson would love to be out there right now. If you ask Christian, hey, do you want to go practice? He'd probably be like, yeah, I want to practice. And it's probably more the team right now that's saying like, no, you just can't. We've got to go and do, make it so that we're going through the steps properly. But yeah, I think sometimes you need to protect a player from themselves. Guardian Cap 2.0 for the helmets. I haven't seen these. So thank you for clarifying, Bambino. I have not seen the Guardian Cap 2.0. Let me see if I can pull it up. Interesting. Yeah, they do look better. It doesn't look as like frumpy, I guess, or just like amateur hour. Yeah, I like it. I don't know if they are going to get them or not, but they look good. They look better. I'll put it that way. Daryl, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What do you think? Do you think the Packers will go out and try to find any available receiver right now just because of how much we've been injured? I don't think so. They just brought in a waiver claim wide receiver today. Technically, it was announced, at least on the waiver wire yesterday, but announced officially by the Packers today. And we'll see if that kind of changes the calculus at the bottom of the roster. But I don't think they're going to do anything crazy at wide receiver because they have the numbers that they need going into the season. You don't want to spend a draft pick or something on another wide receiver that needs to make the team. So I don't expect anything crazy there, but they definitely need some numbers right now while they kind of fight through these injuries. But it sounds like Rome's okay, and hopefully Savion Williams is okay as well. We should get some clarity hopefully tomorrow at practice with a couple of those players and whether they're out there practicing or not. One of the players got injured in the first preseason game. I guess they're trying to keep the roster healthy. Yeah, for sure. Very much. So just kind of turning the bottom of the roster a little bit. Goody is forgiven if he can be a starter and keep the job, meaning LVN, which he has never done. And as the 13th overall pick, that's kind of embarrassing. I'm sky high on him and Hopper, thanks to Andy's coverage. You're more than welcome. I mean, the college thing meant nothing if you know how Iowa does everything, and just kind of the seniors and the juniors get a little bit more seniority when it comes to starting. LVN was still in on the key and primary downs when it really mattered out there on the field. Then he comes to the team as a rookie, wasn't quite ready yet. Plus you had Preston and Rashawn who were just, ingrained in those roles. Then the same thing going into last year. It really wasn't until they traded away Preston that you would have expected LVN to have an opportunity. And that's when they kind of decided to go with Enigbari over him. That would be the only time where maybe it's like, yeah, probably should have been ready for that challenge at that point in time. But outside of that, the entirety of his career is not anything that I would hold against him, other than, again, maybe the second half of last year. Yep, Quan Baker's the new wide receiver. Do you think Kevin King could be brought back after being released? I do not. I would be very, very surprised if Kevin King were back this upcoming season. So you never know. You never say never, but I would be pretty surprised. Everyone is apparently on the no Kevin King bandwagon as well. We do not speak of that King. They have, there's been a new King. There's a new King. He's been replaced. So we've gone from a Kevin to a Kalen. If we lose that, we seriously have to consider banning McGee from all Packers games, home, away, or neutral. All right, I'm glad we're on the same page. Say you're GM for a day. All right, I like the sound of this. Drop passes continue. Picks are thrown. We're getting walked by our division again. When do you, as GM, have to start giving some blame to Jordan Love? When do you start blaming the quarterback? So clearly, Jordan would not be absolved of all error in that situation. The truth, Ethan, if drop passes is nothing on Jordan whatsoever, that's not on J Love at all. Picks being thrown, well, that I need to know. Is it that the offensive line is just getting completely obliterated up front, and Jordan Love's trying to come back from being down and is, scrambling and running for his life and trying to make things happen? All right, probably a little bit more accident forgiveness. If the majority of those interceptions are clanking off of the receiver's hands and going in the air and being picked off by the opposing team, all right, I'm probably absolving Jordan Love. If I feel like the offense is not being run the right way, or that the defense is giving up 1 billion points, which is forcing Jordan to force things more often to try to get back in the game, if there's extenuating circumstances, he could throw 20 picks, 5 of which are his fault legitimately, and I might look at him and be like, I don't think Jordan's the problem here. If it's the opposite and he throws a bunch of picks and I look at him and I'm like, all right, that was laid across the middle. That was a missed throw. That was, I don't even know what he was trying to do there. There he was trying to do too much. Oh, there's a fumble and it's on Jordan. Then yeah, it's on Jordan. I mean, this is why you can't box score scout. You have to go and watch the film and say, all right, who's at fault on these particular plays? And if it's not getting corrected, then you have to make the determination as GM. All right, is this Jordan? Is it the supporting cast? Or is it the offense / the coaching staff that aren't getting the most on the return on investment? It's not that dissimilar to what kind of has gone on with the defensive line. You invested a lot into it and you had to sort of make this determination. All right, do we have to change out and get new players along the defensive line? Or do we make a coaching change and try to see if we can still get the most possible out of that defensive line? The Packers said, yeah, we'll add a 4th round pick, 5th round pick, 6th round pick, but we're going to primarily just make this, DeMarcus Covington's problem and see if he can fix it. And if he can't, well, then you have to kind of look at it and be like, all right, we got the wrong ingredients. We've had multiple coaches and multiple different defenses with the same guys, and they just couldn't do it. So next year, you're probably looking at some pretty heavy investments into that defensive line to try to make that thing over. It's the same thing with Jordan. You have to make that determination throughout the course of the year. Was it Jordan's fault? Was it extenuating circumstances based on what was surrounding him? Was it the coaching staff and the individual, quarterbacks coach's fault, coordinator, scheme, whatever you want to say? And then you have to make that determination. And spoiler alert, when you get into a lot of these situations, normally what happens, and I know you're asking what I would do as GM, but normally what happens, and I actually don't necessarily think that it's wrong, it is a hell of a lot easier, and I mean a hell of a lot easier, to move on from a quarterback's coach, to move on from a offensive coordinator, to move on from a head coach, or pretty much anything involved with it, than it is to move on from the quarterback that you've guaranteed millions of dollars to. Not to mention, now you have to try to go out and find a new quarterback, which you don't have in hand. So you probably try everything else first of like, all right, let's go get him some new weapons. Let's get him a new offensive line. Let's get him a new coach. Like, you probably try all the different variables around him first to see if that's it. And then if it's not, then you're probably sunk as GM by that point. Like, you're kind of pot committed to Jordan Love. But again, this is why you go out and evaluate the tape and decide, is it Jordan? Is it the players around him, or is it the scheme, or is it the coach? And sometimes it's a little bit of everything, which makes it very difficult as well. But you make those individual evaluations and they can chart the best course forward after that. But that initial diagnosis sometimes is the most important diagnosis that you can make, because if you make the wrong one, you're just setting yourself back. For again, going back to the defensive line, right? If Green Bay is wrong, DeMarcus Covington cannot fix this defensive line. And it's just that Gary, LVN, Wyatt, and Clark collectively, and whatever backups they have, behind them, are not good enough. You've now set yourself back another year. And now maybe you don't even know if you have the right defensive line coach too. And so now it probably costs you in 2025 to win anything. Because if that defensive line's just not good enough, good luck trying to win. Like I've said, that's a prerequisite, is getting home with 4, being a good pass rushing unit. So if they can't do that, probably sets you behind in 2025. And now you have to start over in 2026. Or if you just made the right diagnosis in the first place and said, all right, but we still want to change out the coach, but like we need to make a pretty big investment. Like we need at least one more guy that can make that over. All right, then you diagnosed it that there was a player problem too. But right now, they basically said, no, we like the players. We need a better coach in there. We'll see if that works. If it doesn't, they've set themselves back a year at that particular spot. Thanks for all the entertaining content, Andy. Obviously, we aren't close to blaming J Love. Just a fun one. No, I totally get it, Ethan. I love those hypotheticals. Those are like well thought out and kind of fun to discuss. So I knew exactly where you were going with that. Kalen King definitely needs to play. He needs to play more in preseason, and then we'll see if he can kind of earn his spot onto the team. He had a really nice week this past week, though. One of my highest graded players. I don't know if you have had the opportunity to check out my video that I just put out from this afternoon, a couple hours ago, but he was on my highest graded defensive list this week, as he was on PFF's as well. The top 3 were Tyron Hopper, Kalen King, and who the heck was the top guy? Now it's like literally the best one, and I'm just having to mind. Oh, Kingsley Enagbare. So yeah, Enagbare, and then Kalen King and Tyron Hopper were the top 3 players on defense for both me and PFF, which was definitely not the case on offense. Any concern that Whelan is out kicking the punt coverage? Seemed in the game the returners were getting a couple yards head start before the Gunners got there. No, his hang time has been unfreaking believable. I mean, unbelievable. So no, I don't have any concerns with that. The Gunners got to get down there, but no, his hang time's been fantastic. Firing someone for losing a game is crazy work. Doesn't LaFleur have one of the highest winning percentages in NFL history? It's up there for sure. I don't know that that was necessarily what was insinuated there, but I will continue to preach as best that I can and spread the good word. If your initial thought after any game, outside of like if it's just an absolute crushing playoff, or if it's a season long thing or whatever, even then, even from like a playoff game or whatever, if you're after any one game is trade, cut, fire, whatever, like just take a deep breath. If you operated that way, you will end up being you'll end up being the worst franchise in the league. No coach, no player, no anyone's going to want to go to your franchise, because as soon as there's any sign of trouble, fire them, get rid of them. Imagine churning through coaches every single year at the first sign of any adversity whatsoever, whether it's individual coaches, defensive coordinators, coaches, players. As soon as something goes wrong, get rid of them. Get rid of them. It's such like low hanging, just lowest common denominator. Just fire them. Now I get the passion. Again, I really, really do. But like, there's a better way to handle that. It would be really disastrous if that's what the team did every single time. Oh, Javon Bullard, bad game, cut him, get him out of there. Don't want him anymore. How many times have we seen players in Green Bay's history not break out till year 3, sometimes year 4, sometimes well into their career, or even if they start playing well in year 3 or year 4, it's not till even later where they even break out in a more significant way. Sometimes it requires a little bit of patience. And sometimes that adversity is what legitimately grows them as a player. Like they need to go through that. If you want the really, really, really lame analogy that I'm about to give you, it's the butterfly in a cocoon, or maybe it's a moth. It's one of the two. It's either a moth or it's got to be a butterfly, right? So either one, when they're struggling, if you cut open that cocoon, they get out. They will never become a butterfly because they don't develop the wings by breaking out of the cocoon. looks like you're helping them in that situation, but they actually need to go through the struggle in order to actually become the butterfly and be able to fly. They will not be able to fly if they don't go through the struggle of breaking through the cocoon. So it looks like you're helping them, but it's actually the struggle that they need in order to be better. And sometimes in life and sometimes in sports, you have to go through the struggle and you have to go through the shit in order to get out the other side of it. And Andy Dufresne, that mother, and get out on the other side and be free and be much better off out of it. So, sometimes it's not always easy. Sometimes you have to go through it. And if you can come out the other side and have faced adversity in the face, you're probably stronger because of it. And now hopefully you're flying moving forward and can be the player that everyone wants you to be. Super lame analogy. Absolutely. Apropos, probably. But it just is like always get rid of them. It's like, all right. Yeah. Probably not the best thing to do in the vast majority of scenarios. And sometimes there is a Joe Barry that it's time to go. It's time to go. And, everyone knows it and everyone sees it. And, there is that does happen from time to time too. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but the initial gut reaction every time of like fire them, cut them, trade them, just it doesn't work that way. And your franchise would be really sucky if it did every single time. I hope LVN can turn into Aaron Campman. That'd be awesome. On keeping 6 defensive tackles, we'll almost certainly need to keep 10 offensive linemen last year since Glover is on IR. I actually think it makes it less likely that they keep 10 offensive linemen. There's just not 10 offensive linemen worth keeping right now. I don't know that there's 8 offensive linemen worth keeping. Monk is sort of like the default number 8. And then I think you're basically just choosing, between Telfort and Jennings or anyone else that you like for number 9. I kind of get vomit in my mouth having to think of trying to keep a number 10. So I actually do not feel like they will keep 10 offensive linemen because they don't have 10 offensive linemen worth keeping at the moment. So if I were betting today, I would think that'll actually be 9. And I think there's actually a possibility that 9th guy is not currently on the roster. If I had to bet today, I would probably say Monk and Jennings are your final 2. Maybe Telford gets another shot, but man, it would be really nice if somebody stepped up over the course of the next couple weeks. The team is going to lose games. Obviously, every game matters, but losing 1 or 2 at the start of the season isn't going to kill them. Also, almost every single team takes weeks to get into their groove. I agree. I just really think 0-2 is not where you want to start. Just 1-1, and I'll be totally good. 0-2 with both games being at home with still a really tough schedule the remainder of the way. Not impossible, but like you're already feeling like, well, not going to get the bye. Like it already would feel like the bye is gone at that point, and the division will be very tough. Starting 0-2 with Detroit already having the 1 game up on a tiebreaker. So again, it's not the end of the world. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility that they couldn't make a run or whatever. But just go 1-1, and obviously if 2-0 would be better. But just really try to avoid that 0-2, especially as like the vibes would just be brutal. You're 0-2, you get that little mini bye week, and we're all just going to manifest for 2 weeks or for a week and a half that they lost in their first 2 games. Like, that would be bad. Win against Detroit, lose against Washington, you're fine. Lose against Detroit, win against Washington, you're fine. Just can't lose both of those. I'm beginning to see fast and versatile players that get signed to the Packers. Goody is still making some adjustments to making the team better. Yeah, I think that's fair. So be honest. If 12 was at quarterback, would these wide receivers have drop issues? Or would he chew them out to the point they step it up? He did it with Adams and Cobb and it worked. They're letting Love down. To me, it has nothing to do with Jordan Love's leadership. I see no correlation whatsoever. And I think, that to me is number 1 on the coaches and the receiving coaches to make sure that they are getting, like they're continuing to draft wide receivers. There's supposed to be more pressure on every of these guys. It just hasn't worked out that way because of some of the injuries, but they're putting pressure on all these guys. And if you want snaps, you better be catching the ball this year because you're going to have players behind you who can do it. If you're literally and figuratively dropping the ball. So yeah, no correlation whatsoever, and do not think anything would be any different other than that. We'd have to sit at practice and games and watch Aaron Rodgers just glare at wide receivers all day. Whereas Jordan handles it different. Personally, I like the way that Jordan handles it. But yeah, I don't think there's any correlation whatsoever. And Rhonda Miller, thanks so much for being here. Andy, when the Packers play the Ravens, I would run at Jair Alexander repeatedly and force him to tackle Josh Jacobs. I can't wait to play the Ravens. First of all, good game plan. By the way, Nate Wiggins on the other side, also same thing. That is going to be 2 very small corners, and I'm very interested to see how they navigate that this upcoming season. But great game, and I cannot wait to see one of the real fun ones on the schedule this year. All right, going to get to member chats here so we can get to as many. I've only got about 10 minutes left. Usually middle of the field for Packers fans is dreadful, but with Quay, Edge, and the upside of Hopper, excited for what our linebacker group could be. Really pumped to watch Edgerrin go after the quarterback. The more you can get Edgerrin moving forward, the better that he is. He's just an absolute stud. I'm interested to see what Quay looks like this year. Tyron Hopper's taking steps, and we'll kind of go from there with what McDuffie and Simmons look like. But overall, a lot of talent in that room. We'll see if they can cultivate it, make it really special. But Edgerrin Cooper was amazing the other day at practice. Have I heard about Lions camp at all? Would love to win week 1. I have not been following Lions camp. Maybe I'll try to see if I can get Russell Brown or Kentley Platte on that week of the games and just kind of get their perspective on it to get kind of the pulse of their team. But we'll always love chatting with those guys, and hopefully we can get some Lions feedback ahead of that game. If the entire team is dropping passes, wouldn't Jordan Love be the only controlled variable? Again, even then I would say no. It's not every player. There are plenty of players that are, well, I guess there's some players that are still catching the ball with ease, and it's not been an issue. It was not everyone last year. It was primarily Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks last year. It was primarily not the majority of the other players. So no, I do not think that this is a controlled variable situation. I mean, do you think that he's like greasing the ball, putting spikes on it? Like, he's throwing catchable balls. If they were at his knees, again, we can debate what is a drop in some of these situations. We can absolutely have real life analysis on these. But no, to me, on the catchable balls, on the ones that are in the radius, I mean, go back to last week. Romeo Doubs, that's right on his hands. Malik Heath, that's right on his hands. Like, you could not have thrown a better ball to Malik Heath on his drop. And that ball to Romeo Doubs is exactly where you want it on that particular throw. I mean, I would give Jordan about perfect accuracy, especially on the one to Malik, but I give him perfect accuracy, good ball placement, wasn't rifled in. Like, those are perfect passes by Jordan, and they're both dropped. To me, that's a receiver issue. Getting to, and I'm not trying to call you out, Ethan, but getting to the conclusion of like drops are now Jordan Love's problem, like that is a bridge to cross, my friend. Catch the damn ball. Period. End of story. If the ball is coming to him like a spiraling punt, and that's in a professional wide receiver's catch radius, catch the damn ball. I don't care what it's looking like. Catch the damn ball. That would be my takeaway from the consistent drops. I know Savion has been hurt, but he has been out there enough to get any. Has he been out there enough to get any impressions? Really excited to see what he can do. Yeah, I really like what I've seen so far. Needs to stay out there. Needs to get a little bit more nuanced in the overall game, route running, some of that stuff. But he is a ultra talented dude, and I think this might take a little bit of ramp up time. I don't think he's going to hit the ground running right away and just be like, "Oh my God, look what Savion Williams can do." I would be willing to bet you, as long as he stays healthy, there are moments or maybe even games this year where you're like, oh my God, did you see what Savion Williams did in that game? I don't think it's going to be consistent, but I think there's going to be moments, maybe even similar to like the few of the Christian Watson games in his rookie year where you're like, oh my God, look how tantalizing this is. I think you could see a few of those games or a couple of those moments from Savion Williams this upcoming year. Beast mode, the fire LaFleur and fire Goody people are insane. They aren't even on a lukewarm seat. If you want them gone, you're going to be upset because they're not going anywhere. I will say this again. I appreciate the passion. Everyone is allowed to fan in whatever way that they want to fan, not gatekeeping anything. I think some of it's ridiculous. I think some of it's weird, but do you. Like, that is totally fine, and you have every right to do that. I'm just going to judge you aggressively for it. No, but in all seriousness, I think what you have to realize is that for Goody and or Matt, or just one or the other, to get fired this year, it will take a catastrophic season. Like, pretty much everyone's healthy and they go like 4-13. Or it's like, 6-11, but they started like 5-0 and were 1-11 in their last 12, and they completely lost the locker room. Like, it would take something really, really painful. And if you're cheering for that, then you're kind of just not a fan. Like, again, I don't want to gatekeep anything, but yeah, I can even understand if that situation happened where they started 5-0 and they went like 1-8, and they're sitting at like 6-9, and they've lost 8 of their last 9, right? And you've got 2 games left, and everything just looks like complete and utter garbage. I can even understand if you were like, man, I kind of just hope they lose these last 2 games because a change is needed, and I'd rather just have the better draft pick. And the last thing I want is like 2 meaningless wins where somebody saves their job when this is clearly a train wreck. Like if it gets to that point, if it's a train wreck and there's a couple games left and you're cheering for like, you know what, it's probably better if they just lose, better draft. Like I can understand it. I can see through those goggles. Full transparency. True story. One game in my life, I cheered for something bad to happen to the Packers. That was the Arizona Cardinals game. Josh Rosen, when Crosby missed the field goal at the end, I was cheering for that field goal to miss because it was very clear and obvious to me that the situation had gotten dire, that Mike had lost the team by that point. And I love Mike, by the way. I am a huge Mike McCarthy guy. I have been. I thought I had that guy's back for forever. I was at the point where it was very, very clear and obvious that you needed a change. And in just going against Josh Rosen in that game in a must win and completely crapping the bed in that game was, for me, the final dagger in person live that I needed to see to be like, it's done. And what I was worried about was Crosby making that field goal, them coming up with some BS win, and then Rodgers, quite frankly, just pulling a Rodgers and doing a run the table sort of thing. And all of a sudden, you have a team that gets to the NFC Championship again or something that has zero right being there and is not in a good spot. But Rodgers just went nuclear for a few weeks, which he was apt to do. And you end up running back the same thing, which was not going to be the direction that you needed to go in. So that was the one time I cheered against the Green Bay Packers. Sorry, Mason Crosby. I cheered against him to miss that kick. He did miss that kick. Mike was fired that day. I did not think he was going to get fired that day, but he got fired that day. And the rest was history. So I'm not saying, again, that there is not a time and place. I was ready for Dom Capers to be gone. I was ready for Joe Barry to be gone. I was ready for Mo Drayton to be gone. There is a time and a place where it's like, yeah, I don't want anyone per se to lose their job, but like you in the NFL, whether you're a player, a coach, a GM, you are hired to eventually get fired. It's going to happen to everyone. Hate to break it to everyone. That just is what happens in this league. Not cheering for it on anyone, but it's going to probably happen. And at some point it reaches that tipping point, and I do understand that. I just think right now, at this point, where you're at with the success that Brian and Matt have had so far, like it would take something really, really brutal. And I don't want to go through that season. And I hope you don't want to go through that season at all, because trust me when I say we are in for a ugly 2025 if Matt or Goody are not back next season due to any sort of firing. All right. Evil Eddie. Why is everyone rushing to say Jordan Love is injury? I can't even get into it. Matt isn't tough enough as a coach, and Goots draft picks always hit bigger misses. It's one game. Why are people going nuts? Again, like fans are fans and they're passionate, and I love that passion. And I think the Packers have one of the most passionate fan bases in the world. So I love that. Absolutely love that aspect of it. Sometimes just temper things a little bit when things go wrong, and just know that like, A, it's preseason, and B, like there's going to be crappy moments this year, guys. Like it's just going to happen. They're not going to go undefeated. And if they did, it probably wouldn't even be like, it would be fun. All right, I take it back. That would be fun. But if they went undefeated forever, it probably gets boring at some point, maybe. But the journey is what is worth it. And sometimes it's the pain that you have to go through again to really celebrate at the end of things and to see it come to fruition. So we'll see how it happens, but there's probably going to be some pain throughout the course of this year. Andy, I was saying that they won't keep 10 offensive linemen and can use that spot for the 6th defensive tackle. I would definitely keep a 6th defensive tackle before I would keep a 10th offensive lineman. But Stackhouse has to play better than he did this past game. He did not play well, got blown out of his spot on too many occasions. I think he's the 6th guy right now. I like him, but he needs to show a little bit more if he wants to lock in that spot. I know you've talked about this before, but is there any way you would bring back Yosh Nijman to be the 8th or 9th guy? I hate the depth that we have on the offensive line right now. I'm more open to it. I still think interior offensive line is probably where you need to go. You have 2 starters on the offensive tackle right now, and maybe Walker, depending on who's the starter, but Walker, Tom, then you have Jordan Morgan, Anthony Belton, even Jenkins can kick out. We'll see what happens with Kadeem Telford. Tackle is a little bit less for me. I don't know that Yash buys you all that much, but to be fair, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, Anthony Belton all can probably kick inside. So, if Yash were to get cut and he was like your ninth guy, sure. I think that's more than doable for the back end of your offensive line. So I think you could do something like that. I wouldn't trade anything for him. I wouldn't take on his current salary, but if he gets cut, not claimed, and you can just bring him back in as like your ninth or 10th offensive lineman, or probably ninth in that case, maybe even eighth. Sure. I would be willing to do that. I think most people can agree that Aaron is the best Packers quarterback ever. But where do you rank Favre and Starr? I never know where to put Starr because I never watched him and it was just a different era. This is a really long conversation, Beast Bumblebee, that I probably can't do justice to. I think what you have to look at is how dominant were you in your era compared to the other quarterbacks. I think you can make a very strong argument for Bart being the best quarterback ever in Green Bay. I think you can make an argument for Aaron being the best quarterback ever in Green Bay. I still think Pat Mahomes and Aaron, in their absolute best of their best, were the best I've ever seen quarterback play done in the NFL. Again, they're the peak of their powers. Peak Aaron and peak Pat are the two best that I've ever seen. Is how I would define that. First of all I know is that I'm lucky to have got to see Favre, Rodgers, and I didn't get to see Starr, but Favre, Rodgers in the primes of their career. That we did have a team that had Bart Starr in the prime of his career and won so many championships during that. It's a pretty blessed tradition in history. And however you want to rank them is probably more in the eye of the beholder. I would probably go Bart, Aaron, pretty similar, and then Brett a small step behind both of those. I would also not trade my childhood of watching Brett for any other quarterback that's ever played the game. As a kid, watching that guy play quarterback as like a kid himself, there was nothing like that. I mean, the time spent in my backyard pretending I was running around like Brett Favre, there was no other quarterback that you would want on your team growing up watching football than Brett Favre. So I wouldn't trade that guy for anyone during that time on the field. But I think I would probably put him a slight hair behind, but you can make an argument for any of the three. And that's kind of one of the cool things of Green Bay. After watching the film from preseason game 1, who are you keeping a close eye on against the Colts? I really want to watch Morgan and Anthony Belton again. I thought they had nice performances. Want to see how they follow it up. Really want to see Baron Sorrell. I want to see Warren Brinson and Nasir Stackhouse on the interior of the defensive line. Can Colby Wooden kind of stack success? Can Enigbare tear it up again? Want to see if anyone takes that step at corner to go out, get that 4th, 5th, 6th spot. We'll be keeping an eye on Kamal Haddon for sure. There's a bunch, but we'll do the pre-show on Saturday, the pregame show, and I'll definitely break down in full detail a lot of the players that I'll be keeping an extra eye on in that one. All right. I, to this day, have never rooted for the Packers to lose. Not saying I'm above it because I can totally understand it, but I was too young when McCarthy was on the hot seat to form that complex of thoughts. Totally fair. I'm not saying I feel good about it either, by the way, but it did happen, so I will admit to it. Hey, if they go 20-0, I am cool for that. You really can't make a legitimate argument that Starr was better than Rodgers. I think you can, because I think, again, you can't compare Starr and Rodgers' stat lines, and you can't compare them of like which one would be the better quarterback. If Starr played when Rodgers played, it would look laughable, right? But what you have to do is compare how Starr was compared to his peers, compared to where Rodgers was against his peers. If you still want to make that argument for Aaron, I'm all ears, and I think you have a very fair argument. But I absolutely think that you can make that argument for Bart as well. And there, David's making it as well. Bart Starr, the best quarterback in Packers history. I know Aaron Nagler would agree with you as well. Thanks, Andy. Great stuff. Looking forward to the season. Me as well. Thank you guys so much for being here. Appreciate you guys a ton. We'll be back tomorrow. I think I'm going to do a rookie report on where we're at with the rookies so far. Just did the Packers Jets grades, so make sure to check that out. And of course, today's episode as well, breaking down what it means with the Jordan Love injury, as well as a full breakdown of training camp yesterday. Lots of stuff out there. If you didn't catch all of Happy Hour, go back and listen to that as well. We'll be back tomorrow. No live for me tomorrow as we stand here right now. The next live will be the members Q&A. Actually, no, I take that back. Should be doing a pre and post game, I think, on Saturday for the game. And then we'll do a live members Q&A on Sunday as well. I'll see you guys all very, very soon. Thank you so much again for being here. Love you all. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.